and 1 Samuel chapter 30, and we'll be wrapping up the book of 1 Samuel tonight, the life of David in this portion, and maybe even Lord willing, I may come back to it Sunday morning if we don't finish here tonight. But 1 Samuel chapter 30, and if you've been with us, we've been looking at the life of David as kind of a subcategory of the Hall of Faith. And so we've been looking at the different men and women in Hebrews chapter 11, because the Bible teaches us that without faith, it's impossible to please God. And so we've looked at people like Abraham and Moses and Sarah and Joseph, and we've worked our way all the way down to where the life of David is, and the Bible doesn't speak of anybody more than David, and so we've been in here for quite a bit. In fact, most of 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel is about the life of David. And we know through the study that David is the future king. He's already been anointed, but his ascension to the throne has not happened yet. He's on his way there. In fact, it's going to happen pretty quickly after this book concludes. But we're going to look here tonight, 1 Samuel chapter 30. If you'll remember a few weeks ago when we were with David, he was not with the Lord. When we were with David before, he was not with the Lord. He started going the wrong direction, and he started to go into a downward spiral, and actually had gotten away from the Lord for a good year and 4 months. I wonder tonight, have you ever gone the wrong direction? I have. In fact, I was reminded of it the other night when we went to Beulah. I was reminded of a few years ago, and Brother Charlie certainly remembers this night, and I think I was trying to follow Miss Sandy when we were leaving the Tribulation Trail. And so this was, I think, 3 or 4 years ago, something like that. And I think the signal was working a little bit better the other night, so thankfully I got home pretty good. But on that night, I'd only been to Beulah a few times, and it was dark, and I didn't know where I was at. And so I thought I was behind Miss Sandy. I may not have been behind Miss Sandy. I don't know who I was behind, but they went one way, and I said, I don't think that's the right way. And so I went the opposite direction. And I don't know if she got where she was going to go or whoever that was, but I ended up in Carthage. Okay, and if you know your geography, Carthage is not Sanford. In fact, it's about as far from Sanford as Bennett is. And so I was not making any progress. I was going the wrong direction. However, when I got to Carthage, and it was a little more familiar than just country roads out in the middle of nowhere, Carthage was at least familiar to where I need to go. And those signs reminded me, okay, this is now the direction I need to go. And so while the GPS didn't work, and while I couldn't tell which direction I was going until I got to Carthage, that sign did help. And spiritually, sometimes we go the wrong direction. We go the wrong way, just like David. We know is a man after God's own heart, but he is not a perfect man. In fact, none of the people in the Hall of Faith are perfect people. And the Hall of Faith is not for us to look to them, but to look to the one who is perfect, and that is Jesus Christ. And so when we look at the life of David, and just like we've looked at Moses and all the others, we're not just looking at their faith, we're also looking at their failures. And so David is certainly one who had failed God, but is also a man that had some faith. And 1 Samuel chapter 30 is an opportunity for David to get back on track. And that's how our spiritual life is. Sometimes we'll go the wrong direction, but then we'll be reminded of some places. We'll be reminded of some things, and we'll be reminded of someone, and that someone, God, will get us back on the right track. Let's look tonight at David's life and how he gets back on track with God. And I want you to know tonight that there is a way back to God. If you're far from God tonight, if you're headed in the wrong direction, even if you're taking that first step in the wrong direction, I want you to know tonight there is a way back to God. Notice, first of all, David's wake-up call. Let's look in verse number 1 of chapter 30. 1 Samuel, the Bible says, "And it came to pass when David and his men were come to Ziklag on the 3rd day, that the Amalekites had invaded the south in Ziklag and smitten Ziklag and burned it with fire. And had taken the women captives that were therein, and they slew not any, either great or small, but carried them away and went on their way. So they came into the city, they burned everything down, and they took the women away. They took some of the kids away there. They took those, the families away, but they didn't kill them. Okay, so they're still alive. Remember that and keep it in your mind. Verse number 3, so David and his men came to the city, and behold, it was burned with fire, and their wives and their sons and their daughters were taken captives. Then David and the people that were with him lifted up their voice and wept until they had no more power to weep. And David's 2 wives were taken captives, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail, the wife of Nabal the Carmelite. And David was greatly distressed. For the people spake of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and for his daughters. But David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. I want you to notice David's wake-up call. If you'll remember, back in chapter 27, he goes away from God. He goes to the Philistines. Those are the enemy of God. Those are the enemy of God's people, the Israelites. And David does not inquire of the Lord. David doesn't even seek the Lord. Instead, he goes to the enemy territory and abides there for a year and 4 months. There's no psalm that seems to have been recorded during this time. There doesn't seem to be any communication between David and God during this time. And we see that as God would do it, God would allow the city to be burned where David was at. I do believe this is a wake-up call in David's life. Why? Because David was headed in the wrong direction. And it's a merciful God that'll wake us up when we're going the wrong way. It's a merciful God that'll give us some signs. It's a merciful God that'll try to get us back in the right direction. And so I see this as a wake-up call in the life of David. You do know tonight that when we turn from God, when we ignore His holy word, when we refuse to even communicate with God, you do realize, don't you, that there is times of chastening. There is times where God will have to chasten His children. Just like a mom and dad that are in the room here tonight, and you have kids and they disobey or they disregard your instructions, you have to get on to them. You have to chasten them. Why? Not because you want to destroy their life, not because you hate them, but because in your love, you're trying to draw them back in the right direction. I do believe David is being chastened right now. I do believe God is trying to get his attention. And I'm here to say tonight, I'm thankful that God works to try to wake us up. Amen. It kind of reminds me tonight, you know, in your body that when you are facing physical pain, you start to feel it. That's an alert. That's an attention getter that if you continue in what you're doing, it's going to keep hurting or get hurt even worse. And so God gives us those sensitivities and those feelings to let us know we're doing some damage to our body. The same is true spiritually. And God will put some things in our life that'll try to wake us up to let us know we need to get right back on track with God. And so it's such a devastating scene, but I do believe this is God working. Because while David has not communicated with God, God is still working behind the scenes. And so David gets this wake-up call. The wives and the kids of all his men are gone. And then I want you to notice how much weeping they do in verse number 4. They cried all night. They cried so long that they could not cry anymore. They're in a desperate situation. In fact, they are in such a desperate situation that David's men here, these 600 men, they start to speak of stoning him. I mean, Our wives are gone. Our kids are gone. Where we're living is all burned down. And they're starting to turn against David. And what happens with David? David becomes greatly distressed. This is not just a little hangnail in David's life. This is not just him stubbing his toe in the middle of the night. This is a great distress upon his life. Think about all the things that are piling up right now. I mean, for years, David has been on the run from Saul, right? Saul has sought to kill David on many occasions. We know about 20 times that Saul has tried to kill David. That's a lot of stress right there. And then you consider his dealings with Nabal. You consider his dealings with the Philistines and Goliath. All these things are starting to pile up. Have you been there in your life? Maybe you're there tonight. Seems like everything is caving in and falling apart, and you just feel like you're greatly distressed. Feel like you can't take it anymore. Feel like you don't know what to do and where to go, and you don't know what the solution is. That's how David's feeling. We're talking about the psalmist here. We're talking about the man after God's own heart. We're talking about one of the people in the hall of faith. We're talking about King David here, the future king, is greatly distressed. You see, it's a part of our lives sometimes, whether we're walking with God or not, that we can be greatly distressed. But I do believe this is God getting his attention. Aren't you thankful that God, in his mercy, that when you're headed the wrong direction, he'll put things in your life, he'll even change your heart and change your emotions in order that you might recognize him. Notice David's cry for help. At the end of verse number 6, what does it say? That three-letter word that changes the atmosphere, it changes the environment. What does it say? It says, but David encouraged himself in the Lord. Now, when I look at this, I think this is an amazing turnaround from chapter 27. Because do you remember? Let's look real quick in chapter 27. See what the Bible teaches us here. Chapter 26. David here has an opportunity to get away from Saul. Saul's after him, and he doesn't go after Saul at all. And then David does not go toward God. He goes toward the Philistines. Notice what it says in chapter 27, verse number 7. It says, in the time that David dwelt in the country of the Philistines was a full year and 4 months. This whole chapter, from where David gets in fear, God's not mentioned anywhere. Not mentioned anywhere. Do you see it in your Bible? God's not mentioned. Why? David's not talking to God. It says that he's talking to himself. In verse number 1, he says in his heart, I shall not perish one day by the hand of Saul. He says this right after he gets away from Saul on another occasion. God gives him victory, and David's response is, I'm going to die. I'm not going to survive. He forgets Jonathan's promise. He forgets Abigail's promise. He forgets God's promise that you are going to be king. How's he going to be king if he dies? And so he starts talking to himself instead of talking to God, and he heads the wrong direction. Now, fast forward to chapter 30, a year and 4 months. No communication. Now he encourages himself in the Lord his God. He cries out to God for help. Now, I don't know what it was that broke him, but something finally broke him. Maybe all of a sudden he remembered back in chapter 23 when he inquired of the Lord and he got fearful, and Jonathan had to remind him, his best friend had to remind him, listen, you're going to make it. I don't know. Maybe he remembered Abigail, who came to him when he was going to kill Nabal, And she said, listen, you can't do this. God's got plans for you. You can't kill him. Maybe he went farther back to 16 and 17 when Goliath was around. I don't know exactly what was on David's mind, but he starts to encourage himself in the Lord. Maybe he starts to remember, God is the one who helped me conquer Goliath. God is the one who delivered me out of the hands of Saul on many occasions. It's God that has blessed me. It is God that has anointed me as king. Somewhere along the line, he encourages himself in the Lord his God. Have you ever been in that place in your life, greatly distressed? Nobody is around. Your spouse is not there. His spouse is gone. His kids are not around. They're gone. His own men want to take his life. David's all by himself. Or is he? No, he's not. God is right there. David cries out for help. Have you ever been there in the midnight hour? Nobody understands what you're feeling. Nobody understands what you're going through. They don't understand what you're thinking. And you remember God does. You remember like Paul and Silas as they sang in the midnight hour. You realize how good God is, and you start to encourage yourself. And you remember that song the choir sang on Sunday morning. You remember what the Sunday school teacher was teaching on Sunday morning. You remember what you read in your devotions that early morning. And God reminds you he's right there. He reminds you that you can be encouraged and you can be strengthened. And David is turning his direction back toward God. It's fascinating the difference between chapter 30 and chapter 27, a year and 4 months. It's also fascinating the difference between chapter 30 and in chapter 28, because in chapter 28, Saul goes to get some spiritual help, but God doesn't answer, and so Saul goes to a witch for spiritual help. What a contrast. Listen, you can't go necessarily to yourself and not to God at all. You can't go to other, certainly worldly measures to get direction, but when you go to God, you get the direction that you need. Hey, you can never go wrong going to God. Amen. And David realizes, listen, God is the one I need. Yes, maybe David's the one who created this mess, but God is the one who can clean it up. Sometimes God is all you have. Can I tell you, he's enough? If he's all you have tonight, and you don't because you got a whole family, of church family right here that loves you and cares for you, but let's just say it was just you in the middle of the night tonight, God is right there. God is enough. His word is enough. Prayer is enough. God is enough. What a difference a few days, a few months makes in the life of David. I'm thankful that there's a way back home. Just like that prodigal who went away and partied and went his own direction, he had a way back home. Maybe tonight you've been going the wrong direction. I want you to know there is a way back home. As we look at David, I'm reminded of Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. What does the Bible say there? If you put that on the screen for us, Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6, the Bible says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart. So David is encouraging himself and the Lord his God. Notice verse 7, and he said to Abiathar the priest, Ahimelech's son, I pray thee, bring me hither the ephod. And Abiathar brought thither the ephod to David. Now notice this, and David inquired at the Lord. David is now putting his trust in the Lord. He's asking God for directions. I don't like asking for directions. I like thinking I know where I'm going, Miss Sandy. I don't like getting out that GPS. It wasn't going to work anyways. I think I can figure out how to get back home. Not without wasting some gas. Not without getting frustrated. Not without wasting my time. Oh, so did David. He's wasted some time. He's gotten frustrated. He's made a mess of his life. But guess who can clean it up? Guess who can redeem the time? Guess who can do something in his life? It's God. So David trusts in the Lord with all his heart. He doesn't lean on his own understanding that Proverbs tells us. He starts to lean on God. God, verse 8, shall I pursue after this truth? Shall I overtake them? He's going to God. You can't go wrong going to Him. He trusts the Lord. He leans on the Lord. And he acknowledges the Lord. What does the Bible tell us in Proverbs 3:6? When we do those things, when we trust the Lord, when we lean not into our own understanding, when we acknowledge Him, what does the Bible say? He should direct our paths. David's trying to find out which direction do I go. And God is going to tell him. David finds out, lastly tonight, he's reminded that God never left. God never left. David left. He lived it up. He did his own thing, stayed there a while. But that wasn't very fun. It might have been for a little while. Might have been good not to have any responsibilities for a little while. Might have been good to be away from Saul and get a little reprieve. Might have been good just to have nobody knowing where you're at, no responsibilities, just kind of do your own thing. But I guarantee you that after a few days, after a few weeks, after a few months, his conscience started to get at him. He started to get convicted that he's not where he should be. Why? Because God will let you know real quick that when you're on the wrong side, when you're in the wrong area, the wrong location, He'll remind you real quick, you're in the wrong place. Amen. You better get back where you're supposed to be going. Better get back on the right track, David. Amen. He encourages himself in the Lord, and guess what? The Lord was there the whole time. He never went anywhere. David did. And all he had to do was just ask. All he had to do was just speak. And guess what? God, in His mercy, He doesn't hold a grudge on David and say, listen, you haven't spoken a year and 4 months. I'm not going to give you the time of day. You think you just call upon me and I can give you direction? God's merciful like that, you know. I tell you what, there's not a person in this room, my hand highs to the ceiling, that deserves the goodness of God. We don't deserve the advice or direction or wisdom of God, but God in His mercy will get us out of a mess and get us out of the wrong direction, and He'll put us back in the right place. All you need to do is just ask. Right, man. So what does God say? He says, pursue. For thou shalt surely overtake them, and without fail recover all. Wait a minute, I thought that things were burned down. I thought that he's lost everything. Well, no, those wives and kids are still alive. You see, some things can be burned down back at Ziklag, but still got his family. God can still provide and bless, and He can replenish those things. Did He not do that in the life of Job? Job lost all that livestock and got some more back. He lost his health and got his health back, right? God can recover all that, no problem. And so David obeys. David went, he and the 600 men that were with him, and came to the brook Besser, where those that were left behind stayed. I love David's obedience, because he's not been very obedient in the last 2 years and 4 months. Now, how many times do we ask God for direction? We say, Lord, I need to know, left or right, north or south. The Lord tells you, and you go the opposite direction. I've done that. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. Somebody will come to me, they'll ask me for advice, and they'll go do the opposite of what I just said. Isn't that how it is sometimes, parents? Your kids will come up for advice, and they'll just go do something else. Why did you ask in the first place? Well, David asked of the Lord what to do, and then he does it. That's key. You say that's very basic. How many times do we not do the basic things? He was not doing the basic things. He was not asking or being obedient. Now he's asking and being obedient. Okay, everything's great. Everything's hunky-dory. Now we can get where we need to go. But notice what verse number 9 said. It says, so David went, he and the 600 men that were with him, and came to the brook Besser, where those that were left behind stayed. But David pursued, he and 400 men, for 200 abode behind, which were so faint that they could not go over the brook Besser. Roadblock. All of a sudden, David's got the strength. He's encouraged himself. He's back in the right direction. He's obedient. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing. And it seems like he's rounded up the troops who wanted to take his life. And 200 says, I don't have the strength to go on. Now, David could respond in a way that since things have not been going good, he could respond and kind of just cave in and say, well, I tried. Or I thought I could do it, but you know what? If they're going to quit, if they're not going to go forward, I'm not going to go forward. But here's what David did when he encouraged himself in the Lord. He encouraged himself for future trials. You know what you do when you get some time with the Lord? It's not just to check it off your religious checklist. What you're doing is getting some spiritual strength for tomorrow. Amen. Hey, God knows what tomorrow holds. God knows exactly what you need. He knows exactly what word you need from His scriptures, and He will give it to you. When you worship Him, when you encourage yourself in the Lord, He will give you what you need because He knows what tomorrow holds. God knew that these 200 men would not go on, but David continues on. David continues and presses on, and he could have been discouraged, but here's the fact of the matter. He was so full of God, it did not faze him. You see, God hadn't left, and He's not leaving now. He's not going to leave in the future. And so God is all He needed. And so whether 200 are going to stay behind or whether all 600 are going to stay behind, He's going forward for the glory of God. I've seen so many over the years stop fighting, stop serving, or maybe not even serve as much. Some not even in church tonight. You know many yourself. Those that are us that are here tonight, we can look around and say, well, so-and-so stopped serving like they should. I think I will too. Or we can continue to look toward God and say, God hasn't failed me yet. God hasn't left me yet, and He's not going to do it in the future, so whatever He says, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to worry about who so-and-so quit or so-and-so said I'm not going to serve as much. I'm going to serve God because God's the one in charge, not so-and-so. And David goes on for the Lord. We might have some Judases that betray. We might have some Demases that forsake. We might have some Peters who are ashamed. We might have some John Marks that quit. But we must press on for the glory of God. And so David's 200 men there, they decide to stay back. But David presses on, and he gets the direction of God. Now I'm going to close here tonight. Verse number 10. And I don't know where you find yourself tonight. I'm probably going to come back here Sunday morning, but Miss Sylvia, if you'll come and play, I want you to sing that second song that you sang, if you wouldn't mind. I want you to read the rest of this chapter. David's going to experience the providence of God. In the middle of nowhere, he's going to run into an Egyptian that's going to give him direction to where he can go to recover what God said he was going to recover. That wasn't a coincidence. That wasn't just by pure happenstance. That was the providence of God. David's following the Lord, and the Lord gives David exactly what he needs. He gives him answers. He gives him provisions. And along the way, he gets to bless somebody else. God blessed him. God was kind to him. And now David gets to show kindness to this Egyptian. This Egyptian gives him the answers to where to get his stuff back. Gives them answers on where those people are. And David goes after, and the Bible tells us over in chapter 30, and tells us that he recovers all. Not a lick of it was missing. Verse number 19, he gets his wife, his family, all the men get their families back, and they recovered all. Here's how I want to close here tonight. I don't know where you find yourself at. You may be going the wrong direction. You may feel like you've lost everything. You made a mess. You may feel like I can't go back. I can't get back on track. I can't get back what I've lost. If you believe that tonight, you're cheapening the mercy of God. God can give you back what you've lost. He can give you back so much more than that. So many times, though, we try to get back on track in our own strength. We try to maybe go in a different direction than what God wants. And guess what we do? We make a mess so big we can't get out of it. Only God can rescue us. I'm here to tell you tonight that there is a way back to God. And all you got to do is ask. That's the shortcut to tonight's message. The way back to God is just ask. I don't know what David missed in a year and 4 months. I don't know what God was going to do there. But God knew David was going to do that. It was part of the journey. And God also had mercy for when David would ask. Maybe tonight you need to just ask God, help me, Lord. Help me to get back on track. I've not been encouraging myself in the Lord like I should be. I've not been worshiping the Lord. I've not been reading my Bible. If I did, I've not been enjoying it. If I've sang in the choir, I've not been enjoying it. If I've read my devotions, I've not been enjoying it. I've just been doing it. Or I haven't been doing it. Why not come tonight and ask the Lord to help you get back on track? Let's all stand tonight. Miss Sylvia, you sing that. These altars are open.
When I stumble, if I fall, let thy faithful judgment stone and help me not in sin consume. Let thy word in me resume. More like you, less like me. That is how I long to be. Hear, O Lord, my with